Good evening. I'm your host, and this is Kenya News Update today. In a significant escalation that threatens to unravel months of diplomatic efforts, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 10 people in eastern Lebanon, according to Lebanese officials. This attack occurred despite an active ceasefire agreement. Israel's military stated it targeted sites belonging to Hezbollah in the Bekaa Valley, a stronghold for the Shia Muslim militia and political party. Hezbollah itself confirmed that at least 8 of its members were killed, including a senior field commander. These strikes represent the deadliest single incident in Lebanon since the ceasefire that ended the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza was established. Tonight, we are dedicating our full 12 minutes to a deep dive analysis of this critical development. We will examine the immediate facts on the ground, the strategic implications for regional stability, the complex history of the Israel-Hezbollah conflict, and what this means for international diplomacy, including the positions of the United States under President Donald Trump and Kenya under President William Ruto. We begin with the breaking details from the Bekaa Valley. The strikes were reported in the early hours of this morning local time. According to Lebanese security sources and the state-run national news agency, Israeli warplanes conducted a series of raids targeting multiple locations in the vicinity of the town of Baalbek. The initial casualty count, confirmed by multiple officials, stands at 10 dead. Hezbollah, in an official statement, said 8 of those killed were its fighters. Among them was a commander identified as Ismail Youssef Baz, who the group described as a key field operative in the Bekaa region. The other 2 victims are reported to be civilians who were in proximity to one of the targeted sites. Israel's military, in its statement, said the operation was a response to Hezbollah's ongoing attacks and was aimed at what it called terror infrastructure and weapons storage facilities. This immediate tit-for-tat logic, however, masks a far more dangerous and calculated escalation. To understand why this strike in the Bekaa Valley is so significant, we need to look at the geography and the unspoken rules of engagement that have governed this conflict for nearly 2 decades. The Bekaa Valley, located in eastern Lebanon near the Syrian border, is a traditional heartland for Hezbollah. It is far from the usual front line along the Israel-Lebanon border. For years, a delicate, unofficial understanding has been in place. Hostilities were largely confined to a narrow strip of land immediately adjacent to the border. Strikes deeper into Lebanese territory, like those in Beirut, or, in this case, the Bekaa Valley, have historically been rare and reserved for what Israel considers high-value or existential threats. By hitting Baalbek, Israel has dramatically expanded the geographic scope of this conflict, signaling to Hezbollah that nowhere in Lebanon is safe. This fundamentally changes the game. Let's visualize the stark shift in targeting. Prior to today, the vast majority of cross-border exchanges over the past 5 months have occurred within a zone extending approximately 10 kilometers from the Blue Line, the UN demarcated border. Today's strike targeted Baalbek, which is over 100 kilometers from the Israeli border. This represents a tenfold increase in the depth of penetration for an Israeli aerial attack during this phase of hostilities. This escalation did not occur in a vacuum. It is the culmination of a steady, dangerous drumbeat of violence that has persisted since October 8, 2023. While the world's attention was fixed on Gaza, a parallel, lower-intensity war has been raging along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Hezbollah, in solidarity with Hamas, began launching rockets, drones, and anti-tank missiles into northern Israel the day after the Hamas-led attack on October 7th. Israel has responded with artillery, airstrikes, and targeted killings. According to data compiled by our team, prior to today's incident, cross-border fire had resulted in the deaths of approximately 240 Hezbollah fighters and around 50 Lebanese civilians. On the Israeli side, 10 soldiers and 6 civilians have been killed. Tens of thousands of people on both sides of the border have been displaced. This simmering conflict has created a continuous state of tension, with today's strike acting as a pressure valve that has now blown. The timing is also critically important. This attack comes despite a ceasefire in Gaza that has held, albeit shakily, for several weeks. It also comes amid intense international diplomatic efforts, led primarily by the United States and France, to negotiate a more permanent de-escalation along the Lebanon-Israel border. The stated goal has been to implement United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the 2006 war and called for Hezbollah to disarm and withdraw north of the Litani River. These talks have been painstakingly slow. Israel's demand is clear: Hezbollah must retreat to a distance that puts northern Israeli towns out of range of its anti-tank missiles. Hezbollah's position is equally firm. It will not discuss any military redeployment until a permanent ceasefire is in place in Gaza. Today's strike appears to be Israel's way of applying maximum military pressure to break this diplomatic deadlock, a high-risk strategy that could easily backfire. We now turn to the perspectives and potential responses. First, from Hezbollah. The group has vowed retaliation, stating that the enemy will pay the price for its crimes. The key question is, what form will this retaliation take? Hezbollah possesses a vast arsenal estimated at over 130,000 rockets and missiles, some of which are precision-guided and can reach deep into Israel. Will it respond in kind by striking a target far from the border, perhaps in Haifa or Tel Aviv? Such a move would almost certainly trigger a full-scale war. Or will it calibrate its response to remain below that threshold, while still demonstrating its capability and resolve? The death of a senior field commander is a significant blow, and Hezbollah's leadership will be under immense internal pressure to deliver a powerful response to maintain its credibility. From the Israeli perspective, defended by government spokespeople, this was a necessary preemptive strike. They argue that Hezbollah has been using the relative calm to rearm and reposition forces, and that the targeted sites were actively involved in planning attacks against Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet have repeatedly stated that they are prepared to undertake a major military operation in Lebanon if diplomatic efforts fail to push Hezbollah back. Today's action could be seen as a warning shot, a demonstration of Israel's intelligence capabilities and its willingness to act decisively, even in Hezbollah's backyard. However, critics within Israel's security establishment warn that such strikes, without a clear political endgame, risk dragging the country into a costly two-front war it cannot afford, especially with its military still engaged in Gaza. The international reaction is still coalescing. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, has issued a statement expressing deep concern and calling for maximum restraint. UNIFIL's mandate is to keep the peace, but with only around 10,000 peacekeepers and limited authority, it is largely powerless to prevent such clashes. The European Union has called for an immediate de-escalation, but all eyes are on Washington. The Biden administration, and now the Trump administration, has been walking a diplomatic tightrope, fully supporting Israel's right to defend itself while desperately trying to prevent a regional conflagration. President Donald Trump, who took office in January 2025, has a history of taking a hardline stance on Iran, Hezbollah's primary patron. His administration's response will be crucial. Will he publicly back Israel's move as a tough stance on terrorism, or will he privately pressure Netanyahu to pull back, fearing another major Middle Eastern war? Early indications from the State Department have been cautious, urging all parties to avoid actions that could lead to a wider conflict. Kenya's position, under President William Ruto, is also noteworthy. As a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, in 2025 and 2026, Kenya has consistently advocated for peaceful resolutions to international conflicts. President Ruto's government has previously called for adherence to international law and the protection of civilian lives in both Gaza and Ukraine. In this context, Kenya is likely to join calls for restraint. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs may issue a statement emphasizing the need to preserve the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Lebanon while condemning any actions that threaten regional stability. For Kenya, with its own challenges with armed groups, the principle of state sovereignty is paramount. Furthermore, a major war in the Middle East would have global economic repercussions, affecting oil prices and supply chains, which would directly impact the Kenyan economy. Let's examine the human cost, which is often lost in the strategic analysis. The 10 lives lost today bring the total death toll in Lebanon from this border conflict to over 300. On the Israeli side, the number stands at 16, but these numbers only tell part of the story. The displacement is staggering. In southern Lebanon, an estimated 90,000 people have fled their homes. Northern Israel, approximately 80,000 residents have been evacuated or have chosen to leave. These are not just statistics. They are communities shattered, lives put on hold, and a generation growing up under the threat of sudden violence. The psychological toll is immense and will last for decades. Economically, the impact is already severe. Southern Lebanon's agriculture, a key livelihood, has been devastated by fires sparked by shelling and by farmers being unable to tend their fields. Tourism in both northern Israel and Lebanon, which was beginning to recover post-pandemic, has collapsed. The constant threat of conflict deters investment and stifles economic growth. A full-scale war would be catastrophic, potentially setting Lebanon's already crippled economy back by a generation and costing Israel billions in military expenditure and lost productivity. What happens next? Analysts see several possible pathways. Scenario 1: controlled escalation. Hezbollah responds with a significant but measured attack, perhaps targeting an Israeli military base with drones. Israel retaliates against another Hezbollah site. The cycle continues at a higher intensity, but both sides consciously avoid crossing the red line that would trigger all-out war. This is the most likely, yet most unstable, outcome, a slow boil toward a potential explosion. Scenario 2: diplomatic intervention. The United States, possibly in coordination with France and Qatar, engages in urgent shuttle diplomacy, pressuring both Israel and Hezbollah's backer, Iran, to step back from the brink. This could lead to a renewed, more serious negotiation on border security. Scenario 3: miscalculation and war. This is the nightmare scenario. Hezbollah's retaliation kills a large number of Israeli civilians. Israel responds with a massive bombing campaign on Hezbollah infrastructure across Lebanon, including in Beirut. Hezbollah then unleashes its full rocket arsenal on Israeli cities. Ground invasions follow. This scenario would be devastating for both countries and could draw in Iran and the United States directly. The role of Iran cannot be overstated. Hezbollah is Tehran's most powerful proxy, a critical part of its axis of resistance against Israel and the West. Iran supplies Hezbollah with funding, weapons, and training. Any decision by Hezbollah to enter a full-scale war would require at least the tacit approval of Tehran. Iran itself is navigating a complex situation, seeking to project strength and support its allies while avoiding a direct confrontation with Israel or the U.S. that could threaten its own regime. The communication lines between Washington and Tehran, however strained, will be buzzing in the coming days. In conclusion, the Israeli airstrikes in the Bekaa Valley that killed 10 people are far more than another headline in a long-running conflict. They are a potential pivot point. By striking deep inside Lebanon at a time of nominal ceasefire, Israel has challenged the old rules of the game. It is a high-stakes gamble, aimed at forcing a diplomatic solution on its terms. The gamble, however, risks triggering the very war everyone claims to want to avoid. The response from Hezbollah in the next 24 to 48 hours will be telling. The world, including Kenya, watches with apprehension, knowing that the fragile stability of an entire region hangs in the balance. The need for sober, courageous diplomacy has never been greater. For Kenya News Update today, this has been our deep dive analysis. We will continue to follow this story closely. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for the latest developments. Good night.